Welcome to Glass Half Full with Leslie Krongold. She shares her stories, experiences, and knowledge of living and coping with a chronic health condition. Learn about tools and resources and hear inspirational interviews that help you to live a life filled with quality and dignity. With 2 decades of support group leadership, Leslie's ready to help you make lemonade out of life's lemons. Are you ready?
Hello, and welcome to the next to last episode for 2019. I'm planning to get the last episode out in just a few days before I head out on my holiday road trip. Woohoo! So this episode has an unusual title, NeuroJewology, which I will explain to you. My 2 guests are both guys I know from high school. Actually, I think we met in middle school in South Florida. The first one is Marc, and the second guest is Steve. In the past few years, each of them told me about their neurological conditions. I think it was probably through Facebook. And Marc has multiple sclerosis and Steve has Parkinson's disease. And each one asked me to maintain their privacy until recently. They knew I was interviewing them for this podcast episode. I wasn't spying on them, I promise. So we all grew up in South Florida, went to the same middle and senior high schools, and developed neurological conditions in our adulthood, and we actually all went to the same synagogue. At first I was going to call the episode NeuroJews. Sounds like, superheroes. And then Steve suggested NeuroJewology, and I kind of like the sound of that. So there was absolutely no known correlation between being Jewish and having a neurological condition. You know that, right? Okay, we're just having a little pun fun. My first conversation is with Marc, who still lives in Florida, and Steve now lives in New York. Anyhow, so Marc no longer works full time. I believe he and his wife have 3 children, though I think they're more like teenagers and young adults. I haven't seen Marc in many, many years, but our high school reunion is next year, so I hope to see him. I asked Marc how he discovered he has MS.
So I woke up one morning and the part below my knees and the part below my elbows were numb. And the numbness was like, if you sort of lean on a place too long and your arm goes to sleep and you have to shake it out, or you lean on something, like you sit on your leg and it goes numb and you sort of like have to shake it out to get going. Well, I woke up that way and I was like, that's kind of weird. And it didn't go away. And so I think it might have been a Friday. On Monday, I went in to see a neurologist. The neurologist said there are a couple of ways to confirm whether you have MS. MS can be conferred by basically taking fluids out of your spine and doing a test, or like the name sounds, you have more than one episode on more than one date. So he did an MRI. I had active lesions at the time, a demyelinization of the tissue, and it looked like I had a couple of points that in the past had been part of it. He said, it's probably MS, but until we see another active lesion or a next episode, we can't absolutely say MS. And he says, at this time, we're going to just go ahead and not put you on a medication. Well, I'm going to say within a month, I had another lesion, did another MRI, and they confirmed that I had MS. So it really just started with my below my knees and below my arms not being able to feel.
So you were scared?
No, scared's the wrong word for it. I was concerned something was going on, and I'm reasonable. And when I always tell people, just act as a reasonable person will. And if a reasonable progression is to go see a doctor about what's going on, that's what you do. And I talked it over with my wife, and she's like, yeah, I think the right doctor is a neurologist. And that's where I went. So, I mean, if you wake up one morning and you can't feel your arms, you say, well, maybe I'll wait a day, maybe whatever I did will, pitch nerve or whatever, it'll go away. Now, in the MS world, if something is happening for more than 2 days, on the third day, they want you to seek attention. Usually that's in the form of, depending on your doctor, a steroid drip in an IV to stop or lessen the impact of the demyelinization. So I luckily had gone and had sought early treatment because it did stop that in its tracks. Well, slowed it enough so that there was no more damage. And then it's all about how much of the feeling returns when the episode ends. So that's how it started, and that was 2006.
So had you known family or friends with MS before your diagnosis?
No, I was the first person I knew that had MS. I don't even remember hearing rumors about other people. But of course, once you have it, you start to hear more and more. But no, I was the first person I knew who had it. I remember thinking that, this is 2006. So I remember thinking that I don't want to make things worse. And so I struggled a little bit with whether or not, since it happened while I was sleeping, whether or not the way I was sleeping was causing anything. Of course, I was naive at the time. And so other than trying to do the right things, I didn't really freak out, to be honest with you. What all I did was I went to the websites and I read as much as I could, read about all the medications, read about all the treatments, read about what a diagnosis is. I got myself educated, and I'm way more educated than most people on it right now. And in that first month, I would say I read hundreds of pages on MS, like literally hundreds.
Well, when did you decide to tell your children?
Well, the weird thing is I tell my kids everything. I mean, they know absolutely everything. I'm pretty sure I told them that first year, but not just right away. I'm going to say I probably told them by the end of 2006, but I don't think I did exactly right away. No, I take that back. We had a trip planned in August, and this happened in early June. And I remember telling them in August and saying to them that nobody else knows because we were going to a family wedding. And talk to them and say, hey, this is private. Don't say anything about, anything that's going on with regards to that. And so I talked to them about it then. So I'm going to say I waited probably just 2 months.
So I'm not sure when you and I connected and you told me. I feel like it was maybe 3 or so years ago, but maybe it was more, or maybe it was just about 3 years ago. But I know that you asked me not to tell anyone, and I didn't, of course. I wondered, what's changed for you since then? Because obviously you're doing this podcast, interview, so something changed.
I'm not sure, that life isn't just about an evolution of growth and change and changing your perceptions on things. And I think one of the things that's changed for me in that time frame is I have way different outlooks on the way you should live your life, the way that you should go forward, other people. And I think that ultimately I decided that I wasn't going to hide it, but I wasn't going to flaunt it. And so I thought, you know what? You asked me once, I'll circle back to it. It had been in the back of my mind anyway for when you first asked. I was just hesitant at the time because, quite honestly, I figured that we probably know 300 of the same people, some absurd amount, initial hesitancy. And I think I've decided along the way that there's probably enough people who do know that it's probably not that much of an issue anymore to come out. But I think the reason I overall never said things to people, and I still don't to a large extent, Leslie, is because, and maybe you can be reflective of this, that the first thing out of people's mouths are, how are you feeling? I don't live my life harping on how are you feeling answers. I'd rather just be perceived as, just being able to, have a normal conversation instead of always harping back to, a disease or a symptom or something that's pulling you down. I just don't like harping on stuff like that. I tend to gravitate towards positive things and stay away from negative things. And I just don't feel comfortable talking about myself that way a lot of times. So that's probably one of the reasons that I was hesitant anyway, all along.
Have you been able to connect with others with MS, perhaps younger folks or people, newly diagnosed?
I guess it goes without saying, in a way, having read all about this stuff, I'm very well educated on it. And being very well educated on it, sometimes when you talk with people who aren't MS patients, they don't quite understand. They have a perception of that I should be in a wheelchair, that I shouldn't be walking, that I shouldn't be doing this, and everything like that. And I'll give you a little side story on that. And then there's the other side is that the people who are newly, they just want to get educated. So I tended not to really be in a lot of support groups or anything like that. I'd let my neurologist know if he had some briefly that some of the people have expectations of what your physical symptoms and restraints should be. And I was carpooling with another mother or kids to school last year. And I said, hey, I've got to do an MRI and something in like March or something. And she said, no problem. I'll get them at the end of the day today. And then something in passing I mentioned like, yeah, just, I had headaches today and stuff like that. Sometimes it's a side effect, that you get. And so she then heard me. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. You have MS. She decided that it was no longer safe for her daughter to be driven by me around. So you can't change people's perceptions sometimes because it never would get resolved. I gave her every logical explanation I could, but, she was trying to say, well, what does it feel like early on? I said, I once heard somebody in ADT say what their neuropathy felt like. And I said, it's very similar. The pains are very similar. The issues are very similar, but I don't have neuropathy. I have MS. I don't know in her head where it got all jumbled. I don't know how much it was a discussion at home with her husband, but it just fell apart when she learned I had MS. And I think that's kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. But everybody has their own neuroses, let's put it, or bring their own issues to the table. But I sort of think that's ridiculous because people are people,
I asked Marc if he's tried any alternative modalities to relieve some of his symptoms.
Early on, I had trouble sleeping. I don't know whether or not because the numbness, there's a period of self-awareness. And when you quiet down at night and it's just you thinking and you're not moving, you can sort of feel that there is numbness and it doesn't feel right, you can sort of hyper focus. And I could fall asleep with my arm under the pillow, and it would get 10 times worse than being numb, and those types of things. And you just know you're not yourself. So first thing I did is I reached for acupuncture. And I went to acupuncture, and I told myself, so that worked for me. My wife was like, you should go to a chiropractor too. I was like, what for? So I went to a chiropractor, and he's like, if you give me 10 weeks, I might be able to open up some of the things that are, I don't even know how he put it, but he made it sound like I'll be able to open up the pathways of your nervous system by allowing your structure to be realigned correctly. I was like, wait, I don't think you quite understand. The nerves aren't there to be allowed to breathe. But I did give him a little bit of a try, and of course it did nothing.
So what kind of advice, if any, do you have for someone newly diagnosed with MS?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you get yourself educated. Obviously, there are different, what the medications are, what the choices are, and to find yourself a neurologist who will spend the time necessary to answer your questions instead of just push you out of the office because he has an appointment in 5 minutes. So that would be my overnight. You have time to learn everything. You have time to make decisions. Just getting a new diagnosis doesn't mean, oh my God, I have to change tomorrow, or I have to do something in the next 2 weeks, or this. You don't. You just proceed as a reasonable person would. If they tell you that you need to get an MRI to go ahead and confirm what's going on, you schedule it and you do it. When you look at somebody who has MS, and given that I just said that the attack could be in so many different places, that you have to sort of realize that there is a broader spectrum within the disease. That doesn't mean that somebody is necessarily going to live the stereotypical worst case lifestyle or is going to die. And I think that having that sympathy towards other people, because you're going to have to learn that others will have their own preconceived notion towards you, will give you a little bit of a better aspect of what's going on. The other thing, I'd almost pinpoint every lesion I've had and say, man, that was during a period of time where I just was not under a lot of stress. And so to me, I think that if I was going to give advice, keep things around you that are positive. Don't surround yourself with negative. Reduce your stress. I'm talking to you today. And that is something that helps you feel better about yourself and what you're doing amidst of everything else that's going on. And I think that's always a good thing when you can feel good about some of the things that you do for for other people. And you can feel good about yourself. Like, yeah, I'm fine, man. No worries. I'm good. And so I just think that overall, surrounding yourself with that positivity and that experience leads to better health. And I don't know. I mean, that might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I just feel in trying to stay positive. And my kids have noticed a change as well in the last couple of years. And they're like work as well anymore to just lose your temper. But the second reason is because what good's it going to do, right? So,
Steve, as I mentioned, lives in New York. In fact, I saw him just about 2 years ago on a trip to New York. We had lunch and caught up. It had been many years since we'd seen each other, maybe since we graduated high school. Anyhow, his work for most of his career was computer related. And I know a few years ago his organization downsized and he decided to start a venture that he's long been interested in, travel planning. So there's a link to his website in the podcast notes. So I know a few years ago, you sort of personally came out to me as having been diagnosed, and you didn't want to talk about it, but then I saw you a couple years ago and it seemed like you were talking more about it. Where are you at now with, discussing your condition?
I don't talk about it with too many people because some of the reactions I get, well, they don't want to really seem like they're just like the way they respond, like, oh, that's too bad, and kind of blow it off. They don't realize that they could really be offensive, but that happens a lot. And I'll tell some closer people to me, and I know they actually have feelings and care about each other. So the acquaintances I have on Facebook, they don't really need to know about medical conditions of each other.
Can you tell me what led to your diagnosis of Parkinson's? When did you have your first symptoms? Were you diagnosed with any other conditions and then, gradually found out that wasn't correct? Tell me about that journey.
May not be in chronological order. I got diagnosed in 2012 with Parkinson's. My wife, she sent me to my primary care doctor, said, you got to go to, he goes, no, I'm usually wrong. 1 in 100 chance it might be Parkinson's disease. And, I know Parkinson's disease is a thing Michael J. Fox has. I don't know much more than that. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, but I'm usually wrong about these things. So I went to a neurologist. The neurologist, they tested me with a bunch of tests, which don't really tell you if you have Parkinson's or not, but it rules out other illnesses. But the true test is when you use levodopa, carbidopa. If you react to that, then that's like, yeah, then you have Parkinson's because it's the treatment for it. So I went back to my primary doctor and I said, did you really think it was 1 in 100 chance? He goes, no, I knew exactly what it was. I just didn't want to freak you out. I have a pretty good primary doctor. It's like I hear stories that people get the real runaround, like you have this illness, you have that illness, and it's like it could take years before they come up with Parkinson's, and meanwhile they're suffering and taking the wrong medications. Yeah, what led up to that was I had non-motor symptoms. There was mood changes, obsessing over different things, and this was going on over several years before 2012. So you can go years and like not get diagnosed for years. Like that's weird. You don't really pay much attention. It's like I don't smell things anymore. I didn't realize that. Friends at work, like my pals at work, noticed there were some weird things going on, but they didn't really say anything because after I got on medication, my boss made a comment, "Hey, Steve's back," and I thought that was very weird. And I was talking to my wife about that, and I'm like, it's weird, right? My boss said Steve's back, and she got it right away. It's like, the person with my personality changes isn't the person that she met. And then all of a sudden he was back, like after 1 day of being on the medication. There's also other symptoms like sleep problems. I was acting out dreams, like waving my arm. Interesting one. I lost like 10, 15, 20 pounds real fast. And the guy running the department, he's like, you lost a lot of weight, Steve. And he pauses and he's like, I hope it's all for good reasons. It's like he kind of got it too. There was something weird going on, but he didn't say anything.
Did you seek out any support groups? Because I know Parkinson's has a lot of different programs, all the movement classes. Tell me some of the things you've tried and what has helped and what you found no use or help from.
I went to several support groups and exercise programs. When I mentioned lack of initiative and apathy, that's really a strong part of the young onset Parkinson's disease groups. I'd go to the meetings, and it was just me and the organizer. Then a month later, I go to the meeting, and me and the organizer. And so I'm like, what's with the city of millions of people? Don't they must have some people with young onset Parkinson's that want to go to a group, or maybe they just don't want to hear about it. I've got an email address. We all exchange email addresses over a couple of months. So I had a list of email addresses, and I was like, all of a sudden I feel like I'm the organizer of the group. So I'm emailing people, and I'm helping people out because I've been diagnosed since 2012. And there's people that just got diagnosed a year and a half ago, maybe just even a couple of months ago. And they're scared, and they were like, what's going on? I want to hear from somebody that's not 90 years old. What's going on with you? So I'm actually unofficially running the young onset Parkinson's group for New York City. And I'm looking for a new location to meet. So I'm looking for like a meeting space up this way. And I'm trying to get creative and not like go into a hospital environment. So I'm looking for meeting space at one of the museums. I think that'd be really cool. And one guy showed up, and me. But we had a conversation. He was asking a lot of questions, and I was happy to share my experiences. And it was a great support group meeting. It was 2 people. It doesn't take 30 people in a room to make a good meeting. It's like it's not the asses in the seats. It's the quality of the people coming in. So there's another guy. He keeps emailing, how many people were there? How many people were there? And I'm like, it's like, what is there, a cover charge? $10 a person? Like, it's all in the quality of your conversation. I was doing a weekly yoga class, and I found one that wasn't charging, just like a free class in the community around here. I tried boxing. It's not a contact boxing, like you put the gloves on, you get a bag. And that really aggravated my elbows. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I'm willing to try that one again. I'm still doing it. There's a dance class at Juilliard. Dance for Parkinson's is the group. And they host it. It's a free class, and you just got to get evaluated, and you go to the class every week. You do a little. You don't do much dancing. It's like not like an extreme thing. Like you move around. You're stretching out your muscles and getting out of your house. And most of all, I do walking. I could walk 3, 4, or 5 miles a day, and that's only because I'm getting lost and I'm looking for. No, that's not true. I'm just kidding. No, it's like I'm fortunate to be in New York City, where it's a walking city, and I live towards the north end of town. And I could walk easily 2-3 miles and just keep going down the streets, or maybe if it's a nice day, I'll walk through Central Park. But I like the city walking better than the park walking. Park I like to sit in.
So what kind of advice would you offer someone newly diagnosed?
Don't freak out. Whatever people tell you may or may not be true for you. Every single person with Parkinson's has a different type of progression, and their symptoms are different. Some people shake, like their hands are shaky. They can't pick up a glass of water without spilling it. Some people don't have any shaking, and some people have internal shaking. That's my main advice. I went to a support group right after I got diagnosed, and they had a guest speaker come in, and she was like, "Do any of you have this, this, and this?" And I was looking around, and like nobody really responded. Well, you'll get it. She was like the Wicked Witch of Parkinson's. Yeah, she ran a group in another city, and she was just speaking in our group. like if you don't have anything nice to say to a group of people that just got diagnosed, just don't say it. Yeah, just shut up.
I hope you've enjoyed meeting Marc and Steve. I don't believe they're in touch with each other, but I found it very interesting that their perspectives are similar. If you have a comment about the episode, I hope you'll visit the Glass Half Full website and share your comment below the podcast notes. So stay tuned in a few days for the final podcast episode of the year, and it's all about sleep.
Thank you for listening to Glass Half Full. Leslie invites you to leave a rating and review on iTunes. This helps spread the word to others dealing with chronic health issues. For show notes, updates, and more, visit the website glasshalffull.online. Glasshalffull.online.